Alrighty then. So this week, as promised, I said I would do Jim Carrey's palms. What can a few images online tell us about this person? Can they provide us a specific picture of a person's character, personality, their past and their future, what's within and what's on the outside? These are rhetorical questions, by the way. Obviously the answer is yes, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. Now, Jim Carrey is a fire hand. In other words, he has just about a long palm and short fingers. Jim Carrey has a kind of broad-based spatulate palm. It's rectangular, but it's very rounded. It's wider at the base than at the top, only just. And his two middle fingers are very sort of close together. There's quite a bit to unpack here. Now, a broad-based spatulate palm is someone who's motivated and a motivator. That's just a fire hand in general, really. Very motivated people, energetic, charismatic, hold themselves very well in social situations. The strength of character and in ideas here create this kind of the breadth of the base of the palm. And this is always someone who is wanting to usher in new changes, to rewrite the rule books, to do things differently. And this is also seen in the way that his lifeline and his headline are just so distant from each other. And this is quite a large gap, especially for a fire hand. And it shows impatience. It's known as the mark of the tiger in Tibetan palmistry. And it means someone who is jumping before they think. This is someone who's quite brash, impatient, radical thinking. His mind's energies are not connected with his life's. He's quite literally thinking without, he's acting without thinking about his environment around him. And this is certainly true for his physicality in his comedy. The quickness of his movements, and this is also seen in the very sort of rounded fingertips as well. This is someone who's very sort of responsive, acting in the moment, receptive to the stimuli around him. And I think just from the little bit I know about Jim Carrey, often it's said that comedians, the funniest of us among us, are quite depressed. And I thought I was going to see some clear signs of depression in his palms, and I have seen one or two already. And because you can never diagnose by one sign or symptom alone. Now, one of these symptoms is the tightly wound together Apollo and Saturn fingers. Now, Jim Carrey is certainly an Apollonian. His Apollo finger is the one finger that all other fingers tend to sort of lean towards. Mercury does until it kind of wants to lean away, and that has its own story, and I'll get into that. But what this means is, Saturn is to do with duty, career, a person's fate. It's how they hold themselves upright in society. It leans towards Apollo because Apollo is it's what makes us shine. It's our talents, it's peace, it's happiness, it's joy, it's prosperity, it's success. So when a person's career or their duty or what holds them upright in the world leans towards these things, we're already getting a picture here painted of a person whose career relies on his creative talents and his personality, which is also evident in the well-developed Venus and Luna, and of course Neptune, the very sort of understated Neptune mount here, which allows a person to engage with an audience, to captivate, to sort of hypnotize almost, and entertain, of course. Now, his character, his personality, his charisma is projected and allowed to sort of travel across the bridge of Neptune into this place of imagination and creativity. His ideas. And feed it back through again. So where he gets his characters from is relies on his obviously his imagination, but it's all kind of connected here. This captivating an audience, hypnotizing others, entertaining, the imagination, creativity, his character, his persona, who he is, closer to his inner sort of self. All of this is sort of intertwined with one another. His personality feeds off his imagination, and his imagination benefits from his personality. And this well-travelled road here, Neptune has developed as a result of this. This fundamentally, at the core, is who Jim Carrey is, and this is how and why he's sort of reinventing. And that's probably why a lot of actors have this, broad based kind of palm, is because they are constantly reinventing. They read the rule books and then they rewrite them. They're great inspirers for change. Now, too much imagination. Luna, a well-developed Luna, you'll always see it on people who are showing off, who are just show-offs, but really want to show off their self-worth, show themselves off to the world. Luna is a place of travel. It's a place of escapism, which is why it's linked to imagination. So when this area is well developed, it shows our desires to be perceived in the outside world, as does the length and the strength of Apollo fingers. You always see bodybuilders, for example, have massive lunar mounts as well as very long Apollo fingers. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has both of these as well, along with, and he shares these same qualities I'm about to say now with Jim Carrey, a short Jupiter finger, long Apollo, a widened third phalanx of Jupiter. Now this is a clear sign of an inferiority complex. Every time Jim Carrey achieves something, he then moves the goalpost further ahead immediately. So he never really feels or reaps that kind of rewarding feeling of attaining that success. So it's sort of almost self-sabotage, because he'll never truly be happy by what he feels, or at least used to feel, would make him happy. So that's, in a nutshell, really, that feeling of inadequacy. And so this widened basal third phalanx here, the third phalanges of our fingers, the lowermost phalanges of our fingers, represent the physical, represent the more sort of bodily aspects of what that finger represents. Jupiter represents dominance, ego, ambition, authority, judgment, decision making. And so, a stunted ego is compensated for by the physical dominating need to indulge in either sex, drugs, and or alcohol. So one of the signs of depression in palmistry is a headline that veers sharply down into a well-developed amount of Luna. Well, those are two signs really, aren't they? The headline here, I don't see that happening. Actually, what we have here is a very straight headline. Now, in Roman palmistry, I'm not doing good examples here, but that'll do. The headline was referred to as the table line. Emperors would look for soldiers to promote to, generals or commanders with a very long and a very straight headline. Those two features are important because the straighter they are, the more you could place on top of it with the more responsibilities without it sort of all toppling and crumbling. The more you could place on their shoulders and the more they could handle, so to speak. The longer it was, then again, the more, even more you could place on top. So the longer and the straighter it was. The longer a headline, the more a person plans ahead, thinks ahead, processes, analyzes. They are slower to make decisions, but they are analyzers. And so a long headline isn't necessarily a sole indication of intelligence. A short headline is someone who, that's a very short headline, isn't it? And so is that, is someone who thinks very quickly, who makes decisions very quickly, reactionary, likely responds in the heat of the moment. Someone who's very able to make decisions very, very quickly. Whether or not they do that well is another question. But the length of a headline, whoa, my mouse slips, is really not an indication of intelligence on its own. However, a long headline with a long Mercury, which we see here, and how we determine what a long Mercury finger is by offsetting the distance against the bottom two phalanges of Apollo. And although this is a little bit low set, likely due to a lacking of a father figure whilst growing up, this has led to an inability to emotionally articulate. His Mercury finger is long. So the combination of a long Mercury finger as well as a long headline shows us someone who is intelligent. The thumb is also pretty low set as well, not remarkably so. Yeah, it's fairly low set. At the same time, the thumb is actually it's fairly long as well. certainly someone for, with short fingers anyway. And this shows that he's willing to absorb information. That coincides with what we see on the headline as well. A long headline is someone who's slow to process that information, who's willing to do the work to read. And a low set thumb is a sign of a book lover. Now, this is not the lowest set thumb, but this is certainly someone who is considering the world at large, the larger picture. And this ties in with this reduced ego. Gandhi had a very short Jupiter finger, and I was surprised to see that at first. A leader, having a short Jupiter finger, but actually it really shows us someone who realizes their station in the world, who thinks of themselves as actually quite small in the grand scheme of things. Now, the tightly wound together Apollo and Saturn fingers shows us someone who's stuck in a rut, and we see this on the right hand, so we see the practical, the physical of it, as well as we do see it on the left as well. Now, Mercury kind of veering away here shows us this need for isolation in order to really truly express himself, to communicate his message to the world. He kind of needs to do this away from all the buzz and the hype and Hollywood. This is not who he is, and this isn't how he can truly express himself around that sort of industry. The gaps here, between Jupiter and Saturn and Mercury and Apollo, between the first and the fourth fingers here, these gaps are often seen with people who have some unhealthy habit around eating. Now, I've already mentioned that we have a wide basal phalanx of Jupiter here, so there is probably some sort of coping strategy around food when it comes to his need to sort of control the situation. We often see this with people with bulimia, anorexia. I'm not saying that's what he's got here, but I do think there are some likely strange sort of eating habits in order to kind of gain some control around his life. So this incredible imagination here. If we saw a headline that dipped low down into Luna, into below the sort of halfway mark of his palm, which it almost does, but it's not a sharp. Overall, it's very straight, and this negates any of this kind of over imagination, these unrealistic thoughts. The palm itself is only just rectangular. The squarish aspect provides this sort of logical, down to earth thinking. So we have here some sort of negated effects against this irrational, radical thinking, high imagination. The overall straightness of the headline shows actually someone who's very level-headed. The thumb itself is not the sort of temperament that's explosive or brash. We've got here actually someone who with a lot of inner conflict, inner turmoil, because there's just so much duality here. There's so much that's outlandish and crazy and radical, and then there's so much that's actually very level-headed and understands the bigger picture, understands his station in the world, the universe. The heart line is idealistic. It reaches right up onto Jupiter, and this shows someone who is potentially getting hurt, actually, because they probably wear the heart on their sleeve at times. He's considering others. Saturn being this how we hold ourselves upright, this duty, the sense of right and wrong, considering the outside world, our environment, and that shows a considerate nature. Apollo doesn't sort of lean in towards Saturn because it's just his Apollonian features, aspects, traits are just so well developed. They are they're strong, they're true. There's alignment here with Apollo. Mercury, his desire to express and communicate within is struggling a little bit. This is an aspect of himself that he's working on still, and will likely work on for the rest of his life. Now, what I find interesting is that at 24 we see an ambition line here, reaching up towards Jupiter, place of ambition and ego. At 24 we see here a need to rise above our station and make an effort to achieve. Now, it's interesting because the left hand shows what's internal, and if we saw this same line rising right up onto the Jupiter finger itself, then we would see how that ambition has, the feeling of it has been achieved. However, we don't see that, and that's because of the inferiority complex. But what I find fascinating is that the lifeline after this, emboldened kind of move, it takes a very drastic, sharp turn away in a completely different direction that shows this kind of almost sort of retracting and closing off Venus, this close in a domestic sphere. And we see with this rise of success in early to mid 20s, we see how his inner circle closes. Instantly we see someone who is needing, desiring to be free from it all. Instantly it's almost like there's a regret around his choices. It's that iron lung conundrum, isn't it? Where it's what's keeping him alive, it's what's enabled him, but it's also what's bogging him down. Now, what's really interesting is that the career line seems to sort of stem from inside the Venus mount through. It sort of crosses the lifeline and climbs up towards Jupiter. And from the headline, which is at the age of 35 and onwards, we see a distinctive strength of that career continuing at a different area, kind of coming from lunar, lower lunar, in this place of performing, place of a career with an audience. It's interesting to me because before that we don't see that so much, even though he clearly had a career with an audience before that. It's a place of, Venus is the vitality, constitution, charisma, as I've already said, personality, but it's energy as well. And it's often a career kind of stemming from and crossing that boundary of the lifeline itself is often a very physical career. When you look closely, there is quite a bit going on here with that success, with his career. And what I found interesting is this line right here, and this, or more accurately, this is divorce at age 35, and it affects the life, the career, and obviously his mental well-being, his mental health, or at least it's around that age of 35. It points towards the headline, where the fate line meets the headline, and that is classically in palmistry at the age of 35. His career appears to sort of strengthen after that time, and I don't think that's anything related to around this divorce, but in his career at the age of 35, 1998 also, so what he's done Cable Guy, I don't know what he's doing after that Batman film, I don't know, I can't remember. Bruce Almighty came not so long after that, I suppose. But what we do see is this kind of career line here, this primary career line, his primary life path, because it's not just a career line, it's also known as the fate line, and that's probably the more accurate way to describe this line. Notice the direction it takes after probably the age of 50 or so. We see it starts to take a turn towards what makes him happy. This is the left hand after all, this is what's internal, and so we're seeing a kind of a paradigm shift here after around the age of about 50. And actually notice the difference between the left and the right hand. The left hand shows, yes, we've still got this gap here, but on the right hand it's larger. This way that he presents himself in the outside world, when he's around other people, he's larger than life. He's even more kind of reactionary, impulsive, and leaping without thinking on purpose. He's this caricature of himself, and this isn't really who he is. This is almost a coping strategy to sort of hide behind these literally masks that he puts on in order to really bear the overwhelming feeling that is, not depression or unhappiness, but this actually true understanding of his sort of station in life, and this desire to really express himself, to really put himself out there. Jim Carrey's method of communication is physicality as well as strong verbal communication, of course. But there's a need here to develop this further, to understand his own, feelings of the desire to express, and where that comes from and why it's there in the first place. And he's his path in life is showing that he's heading more towards realizing that. That's the kind of what he's heading more towards now. He's searching for inner peace, he's searching for happiness, and he's not interested in entertaining others or hiding behind a character anymore. So that is this week's reading on Jim Carrey. Let me know what your thoughts are on this, and let me know if you picked up on anything that I may have missed, or that you think I haven't mentioned, but maybe there's a reason why I haven't. I can't think off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned everything I think I can here. I wanted to keep this a bit concise, a bit quicker than normal, because I have a tendency to just babble on. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Please subscribe.